Hey everyone, welcome back. My name's Diana. This is my channel Bookish Di, and today I am wrapping up my November in reading. So November got started off on a pretty positive note. I read fairly quickly through the beginning of the month, and then I literally did not read anything towards the end. I'm in a bit of a slump. I'm hoping to break out of it. I have some ideas, but for the most part, I did enjoy what I read in November. I have been pretty consistently this year doing a good job of picking things that I think I'll like. Sometimes I pick things where it does take me a while to get through, and I will talk about one of them this month, and I'll also talk about one of them next month as well. And we are going to have a guest. Luke, say hi to the people. Anyway, so overall, I read 8 books this month. I am on track to meet what I read last year, which is great because that was one of my lower years. I don't think I'm going to beat other years though. Anyway, that's for next month to fully get into. Anyway, let's get into the 8 books that I read in November. The first book that I read in November was Calypso, Corpses and Cooking by Raquel Vireyes. This is the second book in a Caribbean kitchen mystery. This is a cozy mystery series, and it follows Miriam Quiñones, who is a Cuban-American woman who is currently living in a very affluent area of Miami that her husband's from. He is very, very waspy. And it follows on the heels of the first book. And in this one, Miriam it is getting close to Thanksgiving, and she's just discovered that she's pregnant. And so she's navigating that, being pregnant with her second child, still kind of adjusting to where she's living. And then, people start dying again, and she's trying to figure out, what's going on, who's killing people, and does it connect to the mystery that was solved in the previous book. So this series is very enjoyable. It does some really interesting takes on kind of the stock tropes of a cozy mystery series. So one of the things I do like about this series so far is that Coral Shores, which is like this gated waspy community, kind of stands in for that traditional small town, and you get kind of an examination as to what it's like to be someone who is a woman of color, who did not grow up among this affluence, and kind of how she's dealing with microaggressions, macroaggressions, how she's still trying to find her community. So I do appreciate that, and I really appreciate all the cooking and all the food descriptions. This is something, again, that was in the first book. So you get Cuban cooking, you get Haitian cooking, Dominican cooking, Puerto Rican cooking, like basically anything that from the Caribbean is fair game. And again, I do appreciate that we're seeing the diversity of cuisine and culture within the region. The mystery is kind of so-so for me. It wasn't my favorite cozy mystery. It felt at times like a little convoluted. And the other thing that is kind of for me, and this kind of goes with a number of cozy mysteries, is it does veer at times into propaganda. So one of Miriam's in-law, her husband's cousin, is a cop, and there's another detective who is a person of color, so it does kind of get into that. But yeah, that is kind of one of the more uncomfortable things with cozy mysteries, and one of the things that you kind of, if you do read them, is just kind of like a feature. So I would like to read more cozy mysteries that aren't as reliant on the cops. However, I will say, if you're looking for a cozy mystery series that does some interesting things with kind of the stock tropes, that is written by a Latina, that centers a woman of color, and kind of goes into the cultural diversity of the Miami area, I would recommend this book. I don't know if or when a third book is coming out. I borrowed this from the library. I gave it, 3.25 out of 5 stars. And I will probably, if there is a third book, get it from the library again, just because I need a cozy mystery fix every now and then. Following that, I read The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. This is book 1 in her Great Cities duology, and it centers around the city of New York and the 5 people who become living embodiments of the 5 different boroughs and their fight against the Woman in White, a Lovecraftian horror-esque creature entity that is trying to kill New York kill the spirit of New York before it can become fully enshrined. And the embodiments of the boroughs are also trying to find the embodiment of the city as a whole. So I had picked this up back in 2020. I never got around to reading it before now. And the reason I picked it up is the sequel just came out. He is being really demanding today. Maybe because I haven't filmed in a while and he's like, I must get attention. I don't know. Anyway, so I got this in 2020. Sequel just came out. And the reason I picked it up is I'm in Angela at Literature Science Alliance Discord, and she was, along with some others, were rereading it in preparation for the city or the world we make. And I decided, you know, this would be a good time to finally read this. It is not my favorite N.K. Jemisin book. I will say that. So I think part of the reason I didn't connect with this as much as some of the other Jemisins that I've read is it is very much a New York City book. And a lot of it kind of feels like New York is so special. New York is amazing. And as a West Coaster, that does grind my gears a little bit because, like, I am a Bay Area person. As much as it pains me to say this as a Northern Californian, Los Angeles is also, you know, pretty big. Like, Los Angeles does have certain things I like about it. I will say that. Anyway, so just kind of the New York exceptionalism kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, it wasn't something that necessarily drew me in. I also think that the beginning kind of dragged a little. There was a lot of table setting, which I think makes sense because this was initially supposed to be a trilogy. And I think part of the issue for me is knowing that this is a duology and knowing that we're going to have actually less time with this book. The pacing that was set up makes more sense for a trilogy where you do have a whole extra book to kind of develop plots, develop characters, and the setup that we get in the front half of this book really kind of dragged it down for me. And I'm not going to blame Jemisin for changing this from a trilogy to a duology. I understand her reasons for that, but I do think that it kind of affected how I read this book. I will say I did really like the characters. I think those are some of what Jemisin's really, really good at. So while we do have 5 boroughs, we mainly get Manny, who's the embodiment of Manhattan, Bronca, who is a Lenape woman, an older Lenape woman who is the embodiment of the Bronx. And then, oh God, it's an Irish name and I like do not know how, oh my God, man, sir, why are you like this? I'm not even trying to find it right now. The embodiment of Staten Island, they're like the 3 main points of view characters. And I really appreciated how distinct each one was and how they brought different things to the narrative, particularly Bronca because she is the oldest of the embodiments. She's the one who has the longest history in New York City. And she has this, weight and presence with her that I really appreciate. I think she was probably my favorite of the main points of view character. Manny is someone who we don't know much about. I don't know if we're going to find out more about his backstory in book 2, but he's a recent, he's someone who just recently moved to Manhattan and becomes the embodiment of Manhattan, like just as he gets into Penn Station. And then Staten Island is very much kind of this embodiment of white resentment, white fragility, white woman syndrome who live in the city. So I really liked the characters. The pacing didn't really work for me. And some of like the New York City exceptionalism did not work for me. I will say the world building was very interesting, and I do hope that we get more in book 2. It is a little shorter though, so I don't know how much more we're gonna get, but I am interested in picking up book 2. It's not gonna happen this year. It will probably happen in 2023 because I fully expect book 2 to get on the Hugo shortlist. So anyway, I gave this somewhere between 3.75 and 4 stars out of 5. I did like it. It just was not what I was hoping for from Jemison. Okay, so this next one, this is gonna be complicated. So the next book I read was Playing the Long Game by Christine Sinclair. And Stephen Brunt. This is the memoir that Christine Sinclair just released. She is probably like the leading international goal scorer for both men and women. She's a Canadian icon. And she is someone who I looked up to, who I admired. Like, I literally went into drove an hour and a half into Portland to get this signed when she was doing a signing at Powell's. And this book kind of goes into her life, goes into her experience playing soccer. She doesn't give you a whole lot of insight into like her personal life, which is about what I expected. She's notoriously tight-lipped. She doesn't talk a lot about, you know, what's going on outside of the soccer field. Like, she'll let you in for little things, like the fact that her father passed away shortly before the Rio Olympics, the fact that her mother had MS and again recently passed away. But in terms of like other aspects of her personal life, she's very closed off, and this book very much is that. It's much more of an accounting of her playing career and holding Canada Soccer into account for not really supporting the women's team. So I read this in November, and last week, Mark Parsons, who is Mark Parsons is the new coach of the Washington Spirit, but he used to coach Portland. Merritt Paulson, who is the owner, or soon to be former owner, thank God, of the Portland Thorns and the Portland Timbers, announced that he would be selling the Portland Thorns, but not the men's side, because he's not being pressured to do that by MLS, and Don Garber will never do it because he and Merritt Paulson are buddies. I might put a link down below for sponsor. Anyway, it's a fucking mess. Anyway, due to the fact that they severely mishandled a sexual harassment allegations against a former coach, that he and the Timbers were fine with signing someone who was accused of domestic assault until the media got a hold of it. The fact that there's so much wrong with the Portland, that organization. There's a reason I have not gone to many games this year. Anyway, long story short, Christine Sinclair posted a short announcement to Twitter thanking him for his investment, and it was incredibly disappointing, and it kind of soured a lot of feelings that I had. And it's very much like, don't be your heroes are human. And it was really disappointing. It was incredibly disappointing that someone I looked up to did that. And yeah. So I don't know how I would rate this book. I think in terms of giving you insight into her as a player, her as someone who has been trying to get Canada Soccer to invest more, it is valuable. However, as a human who is personally disappointed in someone that she looked up to, it's complicated. And yeah. Anyway, I'm not giving this a rating. I did rate it on Goodreads 4 stars, but for this video, the rating is, it's complicated. I don't know what else to say with that. So after reading Christine Sinclair's book, I had initially thought of a project where I would read and rate, or read and discuss a memoir by a different women's soccer player. And I did film that. I don't know if I'm ever going to release that, given what I just discussed. But I did read Megan Rapinoe's One Life. This was co-written with Emma Brooks. I don't know. This is her memoir. It was released in 2020, and in it she discusses her life, her playing career, kind of her evolving views on social justice and standing up for social justice, involving, racism, queer activism, or anti-racism, queer activism, women's rights. So this is a very different book than Playing the Long Game. It does give you a lot more insight into who Megan Rapinoe is. She talks a lot about her family, talks a lot about, the process of realizing that she was a lesbian and coming out. She goes into her relationship and her feelings about her brother Brian, who, when she was younger, got caught up in a cycle of addiction and was in and out of prison. She also talks about her experiences as a player, both on club teams and on the national team. She really gets into it with her relationship with former U.S. Women's National Team head coach Jill Ellis, and it's not positive. So this was very interesting. Megan Rapinoe is probably one of the most high-profile women's soccer players right now, and it definitely did provide additional insight into who she is and the choices that she makes. So anyway, I gave this about 3.75 out of 5 stars. I liked it. I'm glad I got it from the library because I don't think I would have wanted to own it. I liked it more than Carly Lloyd's book, which was just kind of anyway, yeah. I would say this is like very much more of a traditional like sports memoir. So maybe pick it up for the World Cup next year. I don't know, but yeah, 3.75 out of 5. So after that, in a bit of a change of pace, I read The Monsters We Defy by Leslie Penelope. This is a historical fantasy heist novel, and it follows Clara Johnson, who is based off of a real person. This is set in the Black communities in Washington, D.C. in the 1920s. And in this world, so Clara can see ghosts, and in this world, there are also powerful spirits who can make bargains with humans. And these bargains will result in 2 things. So you get the charm, which is kind of the upside. So for example, one of the characters, Aristotle, his charm is he can become anyone. He's an actor. He can become any person he wants. But the downside, the trick, is that no one can know the real him. Clara is the only person who can see him as he naturally is, not who he is pretending to be. And so, and Clara's trick, we find out early on, is she is obligated anytime someone approaches her who wants to make a bargain with an enigma, which is the word for these powerful spirits. She has to do it. She can kind of warn them about it, but she has to make contact. And Clara, the plot kicks off where Clara is approached by a powerful enigma named the Empress, who holds Clara's debt, and she wants Clara to steal an artifact that has fallen into the wrong hands, and as payment, she will wipe Clara's debt free. And so in order to do this, Clara assembles a group, a band, you might say, including her roommate Zelda, who is albino, who is like your thief, your fighter. Zelda's really great. Aristotle, who is the face / grifter. You have Israel Lee, who's a musician whose charm is he can hypnotize you or like mesmerize you. And then Jesse, Israel's cousin, whose charm is he can make you forget certain instances or certain events. And complicating factors is someone is essentially sucking the spirits or like sucking the soul out of people and turning them into soulless husks. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this. This was this was a fun novel. I really liked the characters. I thought Clara was really well written and developed. I really liked her relationships with the different members of her crew, as well as her grandma, who's a spirit who kind of hangs around. Hi, buddy. I also really liked the world building. So this book really gets into the politics of the Black community in DC, and kind of goes into the social hierarchy, goes into colorism, class, and it also gets into the history of the district. So the person that Clara is inspired by, she is this young woman who, during a race riot in, I think, 1919 or 1920, shot and killed a white police officer who had barged into her apartment, and she was put on trial. She was initially convicted, but then the judge had a change of heart and ordered a new trial, and she got off on self-defense. And then she kind of disappears from history. And so Leslie Penelope kind of picks up that thread. The heist itself was interesting. You kind of you get that moment that I love where there is withholding of information the same way that the Ocean's movies do, or Leverage does, where you don't know everything until the big reveal happens. There's definitely space for more stories in this world. I don't know if she plans on it, but I really liked it. It does work as a standalone. I gave it 4.25 out of 5 stars. I would really recommend this if you're looking for historical fantasy that is very different than the types of historical fantasies we normally get. Next, I read Ace, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen. This was a book community pick. So that's the book club hosted by Jess Owens and Angela. And I loved this. So this is part nonfiction, part personal story about what asexuality is, what does it mean to be ace in a world that is very much designed for allosexuals. So that is for folks who experience sexual attraction, how being ace can compound religion, dealing with religion and race and ethnicity, and sexual and gender identity. And this was just, I loved this. As an ace woman, this was just incredible to read. It broke down a lot of things that I feel just in terms of, that I've experienced in terms of how society reacts, or how we kind of move through society, or how we see society. It also talks a little bit about aromanticism, so that's folks who do not feel romantic attraction as well. So I don't know what else to say other than I'm really glad that I finally read this. This was such a good read. I definitely plan on rereading it at some point. 5 stars for me. I don't have much to say. It was a great book. I know there's many more books about asexuality that are coming out. There is a book written by a Black ace woman that just came out that I do plan on reading soon. There's a book that's, I think it's essays by ace folks that just came out. So I am glad that we're getting more nonfiction books about asexuality from the ace perspective. And yeah, I would really recommend this, even if you don't identify as ace. I think it's really valuable to kind of understand kind of what it means to be ace, what stigmas or pressures that we feel. And yeah, I really recommend this book. The second to last book that I read in November was a book that has been on my shelf for a number of years, and that is The Mirror of Thieves by Sherry DeMaline. She is a Métis author. This is a post-apocalyptic YA dystopia where climate change has made it so that most people can't dream. The exception to this are Indigenous folks. They have maintained their ability to dream. And because of that, they are being captured and imprisoned in these facilities that take inspiration from the residential school system in Canada and the United States, and have their marrow extracted and turned into the serum that will allow other folks to dream. And so this book follows Frenchie, who's our main character. He and his brother initially are trying to flee and stay safe, and his brother gets captured, and Frenchie is trying to keep moving north, and he falls in with this other group of Indigenous folks who take him in, and they become a family. And then the story flash forwards a few years and picks up when they find this teenage girl, Rosie. Is it Rosie or Rose? Rose. And they figure out ways they can fight back. So this, I did like it. I'm glad I finally read it. I did have some issues with the romantic subplot with this. So this is not a very long book. It is only a little over 200 pages. And there is a romance subplot with Rose and Frenchie that I really didn't enjoy. It felt kind of tacked on. It felt discordant from the other parts of the book. And I much more enjoyed the friendships and familial relationships with the other members of this group. You have Frenchie kind of growing up and learning more about the world that he's in, and learning more about why is it that Indigenous folks are the only people who can still dream. You also find instances of Joy's resistance, kind of not just fighting back with weapons, but also fighting back with making a life and creating something new and sustainable. I know there is a sequel to this that just came out. I will probably pick it up. I don't know if I'll buy it, but I will definitely, I'll probably get it from the library. I also know that she has an adult horror novel, which I definitely would like to read. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It is definitely worth picking up if you're looking for something a little bit different with post-apocalyptic dystopias. But the romance was just, it was just not good. But other than that, I did enjoy this book, and I would recommend it. The final book that I read in November was Murder on the Red River by Marcia R. Rendon, narrated by Siri Scott. This is a mystery novel set in the 1970s on the border between North Dakota and Minnesota. And it follows a young Indigenous woman, Cash Black Bear. When she was young, her mother had been arrested from drunk driving, and Cash and her younger siblings were removed and placed into foster care. And now that she's 19, she's making a living as a farm worker. She has a kind of familial relationship with the sheriff, who had initially arrested her mother and then became one of her guardians after a series of foster homes. And the story kicks off when an Indigenous man is found dead in a field, and Cash kind of has these visions that kind of lead her to trying to solve the murder and trying to get him justice. So this book, from a mystery perspective, was not my favorite because I felt like the mystery took a bit of a back seat to some of the other things. So who killed the murder victim is not, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. If you're going into this kind of looking for a whodunit, this isn't it. What this book really does well is kind of describing a certain place in time, going into what it's like growing up Indigenous in the foster care system in a time before the ICWA, so that's the Indian Children Welfare Act, where it does its best to prevent Indigenous children from being placed with white foster families, which is what happened with Cash. It goes into kind of the dynamics of being Indigenous in that area. So one of the things that Cash talks about in kind of a flashback is her auntie is pretending to be Mexican to get into bars that would normally prevent them from going in if they were indigenous. It also goes into what it's like living in that specific area. So I think, like, I really enjoyed those aspects. The mystery, however, really didn't do anything for me. It's also not a very long book. So the mystery didn't feel developed, but Cash as a character I liked. She's very much a noir hero. Like there's a number of scenes of her like smoking in bed after having sex or like just kind of drinking and smoking. I thought Cash was a really great main character. I know there's at least 2 more books in this series, so I definitely would like to pick them up. Hopefully the mysteries get better, but I will still probably keep reading them just for Cash as a character, because I really enjoyed her and her perspective. So I gave this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I would recommend it if you're looking for a new mystery, or if you're looking for something that has mystery elements from a different perspective. So anyway, I did like it. So that's my November in reading. A lot of positives. One, it's complicated. Anyway, have you read any of these books? Do you have thoughts about mystery elements in either cozy mysteries or more noir mysteries? Have you ever had someone you looked up to who disappointed you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy what you see, please like and subscribe. Thank you all so much, and I will talk with you later. Bye.